Sevagoth just got a new augment, and yes, this augment actually makes him a very good nuke, but at what cost? What's good, folks? It's Nightmare Frame here with a new Warframe video, bringing you the return of the nuking Sevagoth, but now it's a Mage Sevagoth nuking Steel Path. I released a video a while back when Sevagoth and his second ability had a lot of issues to deal with, from not being able to recast the ability and completely gutting duration for a single rotation nuke that had to be recasted over and over just to see results. And priming was actually necessary. And if not that, armor strip was the next best thing. However, with the new augment, there are a few things that have changed. After quite a bit of testing and inspiration, I finally nailed down a loadout that is not only powerful in Steel Path, but also really ridiculous, as sometimes you're just left there standing to watch every single enemy die right before your eyes after pressing one button. Just one button. I like to showcase things in a specific order, so here are some of the things you're to expect. In this video, there will be the heart of it all, which is your build objective, where it's all about ability nuking and not using your weapons. You're also able to regenerate energy pretty quickly, and some nice additional survivability with the help of Overguard. Not the biggest Overguard, but just enough to have 2 instances of a damage gate. And lastly, to end with some additional recommendations that will help different scenarios. The latest release in Sevagoth's arsenal is Dark Propagation. It's the second ability augment, so whenever you kill enemies affected by So, the second ability, you will immediately get an additional So cast from the dead enemy with its own new range, which also can be modified with range mods. And there is no limit on how many times this can trigger. And this additional So is also triggered from your shadows when you use the Reap and So combination. To understand the damage loop and how the explosions are triggered, let's figure out what the abilities do. Starting with So, when cast, you emit an aura that tags enemies with a darkness effect. This darkness marks enemies and deals true damage over time, which is affected by strength. Prior to the changes, So wasn't recastable. However, with the Jade Shadows update, this ability is now spammable. No longer the days of running negative duration that limit your helmet options. And with Reap, his first ability, you send out a ghost that hones in on enemies and debuffs them while dealing damage. And the debuff is damage vulnerability, increasing damage taken from all sources. Now, for the damage loop, applying So on enemies and following up with a Reap, you cause a large chain reaction explosion and a second instance of Reap damage when the ghosts make contact with an enemy affected by So. These explosions deal 25% blast damage to the enemy's health, which doesn't scale with strength. The other unfortunate part of this synergy is that the explosion is capped to 4 meters without damage falloff. However, there are ways to add on to the explosions and increase the rate and amount of those explosions using the Reap augment. We ignore the first part because it's the second part that we're interested in. A new shadow emerges from enemies when they perish. Limit of 3 shadows. Killing enemies creates new shadows, and these shadows count as a free ability casts on your Reap, causing more damage on enemies affected by So, and this is how you get the chain reaction. The reason you're seeing obscene amounts of cascading nukes is because of the 2 augments interacting with one another alongside of their ability synergy. Enemies dying releasing the So aura, for ghosts to spawn to kill sown enemies, to then spawn new ghosts to create more auras. It's an endless cycle that the game can't keep up with, especially with how little enemies we get. Prior to the armor and stasis effects changes, you would either need to prime enemies or armor strip them to create a decent damage loop for your nuke to actually work. However, with the nerfed armor, you will deal way more damage than usual. Hence why I don't need grouping or to prime enemies, nor do I need an armor stripping helmet. So, to no one's surprise, just slap on Roar. Yep, just slap on Roar to the build. I mean, let's be honest, after DE gutted the Eclipse helmet, you knew this was gonna happen. Granted, they don't function the same, but for those who don't know, Roar is not only a weapon damage buff, but it also affects your abilities, multiplying the damage that they deal. And in this case, every instance of damage is boosted thanks to Roar. So without further ado, let's take a look at how we put all of this together.
Starting off with the Archon shards, to then the gameplay loop, and then finally, the builds.
Okay, here we are in the simulacrum, taking a look at the build and how we put everything together. Starting off with the Archon shards. All blue shards. Yeah, that's all blue shards. Now, what are these blue shards? Well, 3 of them are shield capacity, while the other 2 are energy maximum, because I won't be running any energy mods on the build. And of course, having my shields really high also increases my shield gate duration. And on top of that, we have a very high shield recharge. So this increases our survivability even more. Now, you can go about this survivability however you want. You can even go the route of health tanking, but this is what I found comfortable. Now, at the beginning of the video, I said this is going to be a Mage Sevagoth. Why is it a Mage Sevagoth? Because it's only to do with ability casting, and you have your book active. What does this book actually do? This is your Grimoire, aka the Favonius Codex. Perfect name for what we're actually doing with this book. Looking at the build, it is modded for gas, electricity, and it has some radiation. Good for some survivability, as it, of course, confuses enemies. But have a look at Xata's Invocation. Alternate fire, that's the large, big ball of electricity that ticks over time. This will trigger an energy regen over time buff that stacks up to 10 times, which is pretty nice to have. Great utility. And finally, Fahas Canticle increases my recharge rate and decreases my recharge delay. This is very nice for some additional survivability. Now, it says killing enemies grants this, but all you have to do is tag enemies with your alternate fire as you're getting some energy, kill enemies, and it grants you this buff. And when you kill enemies, you're killing with your abilities. Not with the weapon itself, but the abilities also work. But have a look at the Arcane. Secondary Fortifier. It's a secondary arcane that grants the user Overguard when you deal damage to enemies who have Overguard. You're basically stealing their Overguard and granting it to yourself. On top of that, it deals more damage to overguarded enemies. Now, this works pretty great with the alternate fire or the primary fire, whichever one you want to use. But I have a large coverage of this alternate fire because it does have primed fulmination, increasing my blast radius, and it's electricity, innate electricity. This triggers an AoE effect, so it crowd controls enemies and triggers this AoE damage over time, where I don't really have to pay attention to where I'm throwing it. Just throw it on the side and oh, random Overguard. But have a look at all the Overguard we can steal. We throw that there, boom, all that Overguard. Unfortunately, it's capped to 15,000. But still, that's a decent amount of Overguard and decent survivability. And we have that 10 stacks of energy regen. Now, I want to show you something funny. These are Xmas units. They have Overguard. Very powerful, very strong. I haven't even activated my helmet ability. And for those skepticals, they're like, oh, that's nothing. Those are just probably regular enemy level 225 Steel Path modifier. Big boys. And what makes it even deadlier is that when we activate our helmet ability, it's even more damage. So to activate our roar, usually you would start off in the beginning of the mission with 2 void slings. That's 1, 2. And for those who are having trouble casting this really fast, well, just get good. Cast your roar, boom, 100% damage. That's a massive multiplier, by the way. That's just 1 cast on these Xmas units. And for those saying, no, those guys are not that strong, you should test it against Exo-Gogstad officers. Moving on to the builds. Save a Goth. The 2 + 1 = 21. Quick maths. In the arcane slots, I have Molt Augmented. This grants me 60% strength on all of my abilities after 250 kills. Second arcane is Arcane Energize, where you get a large energy boost when you pick up an energy orb. It does have a cooldown, but it's really great to have since it's an ability cast build. Fortunately enough, it's not a spammy build, so you don't have to worry too much about losing energy. And yes, this is also going to be a negative efficiency build. So, starting off with the aura, I'm going to have Corrosive Projection. This is a massive boost to our damage, especially with the armor changes. Now, in the Exilus, the best mod in the game for your foot maxing, Brymid sure-footed. Yes, brothers and sisters, this is the best. If you don't have this, you can use Handspring or Pain Threshold, or just, be a smart person and use a time machine. Now, for our duration, very simple, we want Primed Continuity. This upkeeps our So and our first ability, and on top of that, boom, we get a decent duration on our Helmet ability. For our strength increases, we got Blind Rage for that 99% strength. We do lose some efficiency, but don't worry, we have a lot of energy income. You saw part 1 and part 2 with our book and Arcane Energize. We have additional sources. Blind Rage and Molt Augmented affects all of our abilities as a whole, but to further boost our damage and increase the damage with Roar, I will be running Precision Intensify. This increases the damage buff we get on our 4th ability. So this goes up to pretty high numbers to further boost all of our cascading nukes. Now, our only range mod will be Archon Stretch. Now you may be wondering, why are you using Archon Stretch? But Sevagoth doesn't deal any abilities that have electricity. This is going to be a synergy with our Sentinel. Now for survivability, I do have Rolling Guard. After dodge rolling, we get that 3 seconds of invulnerability, and it cleanses us of status effects. And to boost our shield recharge even further, I do have Fast Deflection. Pretty nice to have some decent survivability. And the last 2 mod slots are left there for our mandatory augments for this nuking synergy. Shadow Haze for the additional ghosts so it can deal even more damage, and finally Dark Propagation, the star of the show, which actually makes this build happen. So this is how it looks like all put together. Again, when it comes to survivability, that's also down to you. And now moving on to some additional utility. This is my movement tech weapon. Not only is it a movement tech weapon, it's also used there to kill someone like Violence, that son of a bitch that silences me. First of all, we got this evolution for the sprint speed and slide, and boom, parkour velocity. It's just nice to have some nice movement tech. Looking at the build, very simple build. It's got melee exposure for the corrosive damage increase. This is able to boost my damage against the Acolytes since they're weak to corrosive damage. The focus school happens to be Madurai. Who would have thought? The best focus school in the entire game. Sling strength, 40% strength, and when you come back out, you get the additional casting speed. Funny enough, since you're not casting or spamming abilities that much, the casting speed really doesn't matter as much. You just have to press the abilities once and you just sit there and watch everything die. It's hilarious. Look at that, you just go there, boom, everything dies, and that's without Roar. Now finally, our utility Sentinel, the Diriga. Why is Diriga so cool? Because of our coil. It does that little zappy, and that's able to trigger Archon Stretch. Not only that, it also primes enemies. Manifold Bond is great to reduce the cooldown of all of the Sentinel abilities. Also have Synth Deconstruct, which helps you with some health regen if you want, and if you don't need fast deflection on your build, you can replace that with Equilibrium for even more sustain. So this is why Synth Deconstruct is also here. Mystic Bond allows you to have a free ability cast after your Sentinel uses 5 of its own abilities. And Duplex Bond, because these things spawn even more energy orbs for you. Now, the weapon is the Hellstrom. It is modded for corrosive and heat. It's a very simple build. We got heavy caliber so we can spread the pellets. It's a shotgun type of weapon, so it spreads the pellets, increase the multi-shot so we get additional pellets, more fire rate, and it's modded for corrosive heat. It also has radiation. Radiation's great to have because confusion. You have less enemies shooting at you. All right, to end the video, we're just going into Steel Path really quick just to show you how this is actually done. For those who are worried that they're not going to do the rotation right, I did a few Void Slings here to get that boost. Throw your alternate fire. You see how it's triggering on them? Dead. Dead. Oh, these guys are still alive? Dead. Do you see my energy? Yeah. Negative efficiency build, by the way. Oh, look, it's dealing damage over here. Dead. This is so stupid. Anyway, that has been it for me. I do hope you enjoyed this video and learned something from it. And if you did, please feel free to leave a like, share, and subscribe. Ooh, Overguard. For more Warframe content, streams, and so much more. Do refer to the description. Thanks for watching, and as always, peace. Oh my god, boys. Y'all are just dying on the other side of the world. What the hell, man?